Husband got weird about physical affection from me and things escalated very badly. We'd been married 3 years. Before that, we dated for 2. 5 years total, and not once did I think of him as someone who ran cold. He was the one who reached for my hand in the car. He was the one who pulled me into hugs in the kitchen while I was cooking. He set the tone for how affectionate we were, and I just matched it. Then about 4 months ago, something shifted. He came home from work one evening quieter than usual. We ate dinner, watched something on TV, and right before bed, he said he wanted to talk. Instead, he told me he'd been doing a lot of thinking about his childhood, about emotional patterns he'd developed early on. He said he'd realized he had a complicated relationship with physical touch, that being touched without expecting it sometimes triggered something he couldn't fully explain. He wasn't blaming me, he just needed one boundary. He needed to be the one to initiate all physical contact. Hugs, kisses, anything. If he didn't reach for me first, I needed to wait. It felt strange, but he was asking in such a calm, honest way. He'd mentioned his childhood before, not in detail, but enough that I knew there were things he was still unpacking. I didn't want to be the person who heard I'm working through something and responded with, but what about what I need? So I said okay. I told him I loved him and I'd respect it. And for a while, it seemed fine. He still showed affection every day, on his terms, but consistently. A kiss in the morning, his hand on my back in the hallway. Some nights he'd pull me close on the couch without saying a word. It was less than before, but it was there. I told myself he was doing the work. I told myself it was temporary. I made adjustments I didn't tell anyone about. I stopped reaching for him. I trained myself out of instincts I'd had for 5 years. If I felt the urge to squeeze his arm or lean in, I waited. I let him lead. I became someone who asked permission with her eyes before moving closer to her own husband. I remember one night we were watching TV and I fell asleep on the couch. I woke up and he had moved to the armchair. Not the other side of the couch, the armchair. And I thought, okay, he needs space. That's what you do when you love someone. I never told anyone. Not my sister. Not my best friend. I was protecting him. Then 3 weeks ago, I got the call I'd been working toward for 2 years. A promotion, a real one. The kind that changes your salary and your title and how people look at you in meetings. My manager pulled me aside before the announcement. I drove home with my hands shaking on the wheel, laughing at red lights like an idiot. One of those days where everything feels slightly unreal. I walked through the front door and he was standing in the kitchen. I went for him. Both arms, full hug, the kind you throw without thinking because you're too happy to be careful. I felt him go rigid immediately. He stepped back hard and pushed my arms off him. His face changed. Then he started yelling. Called me a loser. Said I'd traumatized him. Said I never respected anything he asked and this proved exactly who I was. Told me to get out. I had just gotten promoted. I came home to share it with my husband. And now he was screaming at me in our kitchen because I hugged him. I didn't fight back. I went upstairs, packed a bag, and left. Checked into a hotel and sat on the bed trying to figure out what had happened to my life. 2 days passed. He didn't call. His brother told me he'd tried to file a police report. Wanted me charged with physical misconduct. The officer said a hug from a spouse wasn't something they'd pursue. Then he threatened to call my employer and tell them I couldn't be trusted around people. I barely slept. Then his brother called, asked me to come back, said there was something I needed to hear and that he'd be there the whole time. I went. My husband was at the kitchen table. His brother across from him. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then my husband said he'd been having an affair. A 21-year-old intern at his company. Months. He said he was in love with her. He hadn't known how to leave, hadn't been willing to face what it would cost him, so he built a plan to make me the problem instead. The no-touch rule was never about trauma. He invented it to create distance while he checked out, and to set a trap he knew I'd eventually fall into. He needed me to slip, to reach for him without thinking, so he could blow up the marriage and walk away looking like the one who got hurt. That's what the hug was. That's what he'd been waiting for. We agreed to divorce. 50-50, fast and clean. No kids, no pets, no reason to drag it out. I have a good income and don't need anything from him except paperwork. I haven't cried about him since that conversation. I've cried about the years, about the marriage I thought I was in, about every time I stopped myself from reaching for him because I was trying so hard to be what he needed. He wasn't healing. He was just done, and too cowardly to say so.